Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So I want to welcome everyone to the second day of the Blockchain Bootcamp and Workforce Expo at Capital Technology University in Laurel, Maryland. And we are very excited today for our special keynote, Senator Alsobrooks, who will be here. She's on stage, but she'll be giving her remarks in just a minute. I want to remind everyone who's listening to this live stream that we have 4 more days of content. So you are welcome to come to Laurel, Maryland, and to explore the area of blockchain, technology, and workforce development. So without any further ado, I would like to have Senator Alsobrooks come up. She does not need any additional introductions. I think we all know the leader that she is in Maryland, as well as around the United States and the world. And we're very grateful to have you here. You've been an inspiration to both myself as well as others. So thank you so much.
No worries. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. And first of all, I want to say thank you so much to Jackie for her leadership and the invitation today. Thank you as well to Mason and the entire Maryland Blockchain Association for the invitation and opportunity to be a part of the forum. And thank all of you as well for coming out. Looks like you all have a really busy and exciting week planned, and I'm really just grateful to have a moment to come by and to share a little bit of my own experience so far and work that we've done in the Senate. And I have to tell you, it really is exciting to be a part of these discussions and conversations that are happening. Many people have said to me, well, tell me, how is it that you have come to be involved in this space at all, starting with the Genius Act? And I have to give credit to my 21-year-old daughter, who's recently turned 21. It has been my experience that I started hearing about crypto, and actually started first with one of my friend's nephew, who was talking all about cryptocurrency, then realized that my daughter and her friends were all very, very interested in this issue. And it helped me to understand that we needed to get up to speed on this market and to really fully understand what it is all about. And I have to tell you, one of the things that we know now as a result of information that we have gathered from the American public is that they don't fully understand crypto. That is what we know, is that they really don't. It's a similar vibe around technology like AI, because we know that recent polls have said that people are wary of AI in the future. But what we know is that this is not a new trend. In fact, an uneasiness and a general lack of understanding has historically surrounded the beginning of new stages of innovation. And what's followed is that people who understand and embrace emerging markets, we know, benefit greatly from these markets, and those who do not understand are greatly left behind. And so that is the reason that it's so important to have these discussions around emerging markets. It's also why I value being at the Senate at a time like this one, when we recognize that we are not only celebrating the growth of new innovations, watching it grow right here in our country, and also pushing to make sure that our country is a leader where all of these innovations are concerned. But it is also the case that I have a responsibility that I understand very clearly to look out for the best interest of Marylanders like all of you, and particularly where these issues are concerned. It's a responsibility that gives me the opportunity to work on innovative policies that I know will shape the future, and also open up something that has been very important to me, and it is pathways to prosperity. And I have decided that I will not stand on the sidelines as these innovations grow, because it is my #1 priority to ensure that every single person I have the opportunity to represent has a pathway to prosperity, that they are building wealth not only for themselves but for their children. And so I have decided to roll up my sleeves and to make sure that these innovations are not only growing, but doing so in a way that protects Americans, that protects them from many of the concerns they have around safety for themselves and for their children, as well as making sure that the workforce remains creative and knowledgeable and really ready to seize all of these opportunities. So that means that as legislators, we have an opportunity, but also an obligation to engage, and that is what I have done. Given great advice from my daughter from the very beginning, that she advised me that I should go and just dive right in, and I agreed with her there. So I'm happy to be here today as a part of the forum. I thank you so much for having me. I brought with me amazing team members, and I would be remiss if I did not introduce them. Meredith Happy is typing away because she's our communications director, so she's making sure we're straight there. Jordan Hines leads us in our state team. Perrin Brown, many of you I'm sure have worked with Perrin, who's become really well recognized as one of my senior policy advisors, and has really been instrumental in particular in the work that we've done in Genius, and is now advising also on Clarity. So I want to thank them for being here, and thank you all again for having me.
So we are going to have a small fireside chat right now, and we will also be opening up for questions. Does anyone have a short question before we have the fireside chat? No? Okay. Mason, would you like to come on up? All right. This will be your mic.
Thank you.
So one of the reasons why we decided to have a fireside chat is of all the things that you've talked about, the intergenerational need for this conversation. And on the stage, we have different generations, as well as what you've talked about. I'm also a mom, and my daughter's 29. And so, again, we hear from our children what they need and what they also don't know. So there's a lot going on in the world, and there's a lot of work that we have to do in order to make sure that they understand what the new economy is all about. Now, you've talked about your daughter, and you've talked about how she's given you advice and given you insight. Any other thoughts that she has shared that kind of can talk about this intergenerational need with this new financial literacy and the technology developments, and where we need to go to kind of educate not just the youth or college students, but also those who are career switchers?
Well, you know, one of the things I share with you is not just what she said substantively about this technology, but she also gave me great advice about the approach that I should use. As you all well know, this is going to require for us to legislate around these innovations bipartisan sort of collaboration and cooperation. And it was my daughter who called me as I was heading into orientation as a new freshman senator. And she was in college. She's heading this fall into her senior year. And she said, you know, you're going to a place, she said, you know, you've generally operated, because I was county executive here in Prince George's. And she said, you know, you're accustomed to operating in spaces where people largely see the world the way that you do. And you're going to a place where they don't all see it quite the same. And she said, you know what, and this is going to be good for you. And she said, you know, it is, you know, you have an opportunity to hear not only that people see it differently, but you're going to have to hear why. And she said, you know, my advice to you is to go and take up some space. If I were you, I'd find myself at tables with people who don't all see the world quite the same way, and see if you can find some solutions, if you can really work together to find some solutions to some of the complex issues. And what has been more complex than this issue? You know, cryptocurrency, digital assets, the blockchain, AI, these are extremely complex issues. But these are ones that will impact, first of all, it's not that this is something that may happen, it is currently happening. And so it behooves me and all of us, I think, to come together to find the best ways to not only make sure that this innovation grows, but that we control how it grows, that we shape how it grows. And that was the great advice that my daughter gave me, was to engage with people who don't all see it the same way and see if we can come up with some great solutions. And that's what we're working to do.
Awesome. And on the theme of coming up with great solutions, an issue that motivated not just the 45,000 Stand for Crypto advocates in Maryland, but the crypto community across the entire country was the debate about crypto rewards. And you were a leader in figuring out how to handle that. You've been a leader in crypto policy in general, so the community is very grateful for that. But I wanted to ask you, how did that come about? What was your process in becoming one of the key decision makers in balancing protecting communities and existing institutions while empowering growth and innovation for all types of users that care about building wealth and care about crypto and technology writ large?
Well, so right after Genius, which has been almost, I can't believe it, it's been almost a year since Genius passed. Perrin was reminding me of that. The year has gone by so quickly. But right after Genius, then we moved right over to Clarity, and we knew that there were a number of issues that were going to still have to be resolved in Clarity. And it was early on that I raised the issue around interest and yield and insisted that this was an issue that was going to have to be resolved before we could move forward at all. And I have to tell you that at that table, as anticipated by my daughter, there was widespread disagreement. In fact, just to give you kind of little inside information, it was a little wild in there at that table for a minute, where people said the concept that paying interest or yield would cause mass deposit flight was illusionary, that this was not a real thing, and that if it came to be a thing, well, then at that point, maybe we'd do a study and determine how much deposit flight had happened at banks as a result of paying interest or yield. So I insisted that this was an issue that had to be resolved, and then finally, one of my colleagues did me a great favor, and in his own frustration and exasperation said, "You're right, it's gonna cause a shit ton of deposit flight," and in his opinion, as it should be. We didn't agree on this issue that it should be. I thought that we should make sure that we are concerned about community banks and that we were insisted, of course, that we not allow crypto industry to become a bank-like product without bank-like protections. And it wasn't until Senator Tillis came along as a partner, eventually he came along to work with me as a partner, to insist that this was an area that we would look at, making sure, again, that we do not allow bank-like products without bank-like protections, and that we would not allow the payment of interest or yield in a way that either functionally or economically operated like yield paid by a bank. And so this was the issue, and you saw that we were able, I think, to come up with pretty great compromises where this is concerned. Now, I have to tell you, like every other great compromise, it left everyone just a little bit unhappy. So we saw unhappiness on both sides, but I think we came up with what was a great compromise and continue to work.
Yeah, and I'll pass it back to you really quickly, but I just want to share a little bit about the community's experience with that, because they're very passionate about new products and the new ways that crypto can change existing financial systems. And so over the course of, I don't know, it's been like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, I think there were something like 700,000 emails sent. And we have our chapter president from Maryland there who actually met with your office and brought founders. So people were very passionate, and there was a point where folks were really scared that Clarity wasn't going to happen because of this issue. So let's just appreciate all of your leadership moving things forward.
Thank you.
So my background is a lawyer, but I'm also in education. And I know that I've career switched many times. And looking at what the workforce is going towards and what we need to do both on the federal as well as the state level, I mean, students and also adults, there's a whole new vocabulary that they need to learn. And especially if they're going to be entering into this and doing any of the tech development, peer-to-peer apps, smart contracts, a whole slew of vocabulary. What do we do to help with this workforce development? And can it be from the federal side, or does it have to be from the state side? And then how do we get this started?
Yeah, so you know what I say to that is, again, I think it's really important for us to just stay in a space where we understand that we're not talking about a technology that may happen. It's literally here right now. And it's already happening, already changing the way that we receive information. It is affecting how we receive healthcare information. It's affecting how our children learn. It's affecting how businesses operate. And so it's not just a matter of how it works, but I think we have an opportunity to decide who it benefits. to shape it in a way that is helpful to our children, helpful to business, and helpful to others. And so I would say that my general framing for this and every other piece of legislation really is I regard myself as a very optimistic person, but so understanding that we have an opportunity and obligation to ensure that our children are not afraid of these technologies are coming. We don't want them to be afraid of AI. We don't want them to be afraid of cryptocurrency. I think we have an obligation to jump in and to make sure, again, that we are shaping how, not only how this affects and impacts workers and businesses and others, but to train and to teach our children how to make sure that they are able to navigate it and to use it in a way that is both useful and responsible. I think my job as a legislator is to make sure that responsibility is a big word for all of us. It is, again, it is the case that I am very optimistic about what this means for people. You know, I think about, let's just take one quick second to talk about a story. I met a man a few weeks ago who said he worked at KFC when he was 16 years old. He started there, and now he owns 32 of them. And he talked about the way that the digital assets helps him to gain another percentage point of profit in a very narrow profit margin that helps him to reinvest in his business and also to increase the bottom line for his workers. So there are really many, many positives for this. But again, we have to make sure that it is done in a way that is responsible, that protects privacy, that, you know, I have a good number of my constituents who are concerned about scams, concerned about fraud, concerned about being harmed. And so I think we have a responsibility to not only make sure that the innovation grows, but that we are looking at the concerns around privacy and cybersecurity and scams and fraud and seniors who are concerned. And I think we can do both.
Awesome. Going on the theme of optimism, there's a lot of optimism in the community right now that after the success of Genius and after all the advocacy that the crypto community has been doing, that the Senate is moving forward and working super hard on market structure. And people are, they're on the edge of their seat. And I would love to know from your perspective, just, I guess, to the community as a group, what do you think about the current status of market structure? You're obviously knee-deep in making this stuff work and making sure people are on the same team, but do you think it's possible that we can move things forward before the August recess? What should the community expect, if that's something they can even try and understand right now?
Yeah, so just so you know, my perspective on most things is a little different in the Senate because I was the only freshman in my class who came to the Senate not from the House, but from an executive's position. So I am a part of the Let's Get It Done crowd, and I am very interested and very, very hopeful that I want to get something done, and I want to get this done. And so I am working really hard along with my other colleagues to try to make sure that something happens. But I have to tell you, we have to make sure people are very concerned about the corruption of this president. And so ethics is a very big issue, and we are working hard to make sure that we address the concern of the American public where that is concerned. You know that I'm also a former prosecutor, and a number of my colleagues from the law enforcement community have concerns as well. But I can tell you, I am working, and I'm working with Senator Tillis and others, and we're going to be working around the clock to try to move forward. And I am very hopeful that we can get something done, even in the small window that we have. But I think everybody should be clear that my Republican colleagues are going to have to lean in and make sure that these issues are addressed. And again, the American public is very concerned about it, but I'm very hopeful that we can get it done. I'm going to be working, until the final hour to try to make sure that it happens. But I think the ball is in the court of my Republican colleagues. I really do think that to make this happen. I think we have worked, really well together in a bipartisan way, but we still need to make sure that we address some of these two big issues.
So what would you say to your colleagues who are still skeptical that digital assets are something to be thinking about?
I get it. I understand the skepticism of those who are concerned. They share some of the concerns I share about making sure that it's done safely and responsibly. But again, it is not the case that we're talking about whether this is going to happen. It already is. And I think we have an obligation to jump in to make sure that we are not only protecting innovation, and I think that the United States should be first in this. I think the United States should be a leader in these technologies, and not only a leader in terms of how of having it grow, but how it grows. I think we can shape how it happens here and around the world. I think we have that opportunity. And so for those who are still skeptical, again, think back to my 21-year-old daughter and her peers. I received one of the first calls I received. We had a committee markup, and of course I voted to try to continue the bipartisan conversations. The first call I got when I voted to move this forward was from my daughter, who said her peers were texting her saying, "Tell your mother thank you." Our kids are watching. They expect for us not to be afraid, but to be really thoughtful about shaping what is going to affect their future. I think it's really important that we do. And again, it's already impacting us. Healthcare, businesses, cybersecurity, other areas, and I think we have an opportunity to make sure that we have the proper guardrails to have it happen.
Cool, and I have one final question here about, I guess, the guardrails specifically, right? As it currently stands in the status quo, there's somewhat of a vacuum, right? And without getting something done, there is a gap that would affect all Americans. And just from your perspective, I think, even from a consumer protections point, what do you think filling that gap unlocks for both the community in Maryland, but for the community across the country?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. When we think about guardrails, it would be absolutely crazy not to do something to regulate this right now. The status quo, in other words, is not acceptable. That's the reason that this legislation is so important, is that we have to regulate it. It's like putting your head in the sand and pretending that it is not here. It is here. So what we're talking about right now is putting guardrails in place, putting the regulations in place, because this industry is already going. It's all with or without us, is what I'm saying. All of these technologies are happening with or without us, and I think given that we have an opportunity to regulate it and put guardrails in place in a way that helps protect people is really important, because it's already going. That's what I would say about the guardrails, is it's happening.
So I know that you're leading the way on the federal side. I know in Maryland, for the Maryland General Assembly last year with Senator Watson, with Delegate Boafo, we were very successful with 3 different bills. We actually have now a statewide official task force on digital assets and innovative tech, of which the Maryland Blockchain Association has 2 seats. We also passed a Stablecoin Act, and we also passed a blockchain real estate study. So we are leading the way, and with your guidance, for the next General Assembly, I know that we're going to be looking at how else can we support the consumers and the citizens here in Maryland. We look forward to your guidance for that, because there is, as you said, a lot of work that we need to do from both the consumer protection and education side for all different generations. As we started our fireside chat, I said this is intergenerational. And one of the passions that I have is that everyone needs a will. If you own a digital asset, you need a will, because it's an appreciating asset that your family needs to know about. So again, there are certain things that we all need to do to kind of step up the game for that education, and I want to thank you for being here. Any last minute thoughts before we sign off?
I think one final thought I'd like to leave is, if I hadn't expressed this enough, is I understand, I think, what most Americans are feeling even in this moment, who are looking out and asking, what is it that we are going to do to ensure that they and their children will have an opportunity to really grow wealth for themselves and for their families. We have assumed for far too long that people are interested in living on the margins, that they want from us to show them how to make it by. I am a person who came from a family with a father who was a car salesman and a mom who was a receptionist, and I can tell you that every family wants the same thing, to have real and growing economic opportunity for themselves and for their family members. And I think we have an obligation to figure out how to do that in every way that we can. I see digital assets, I see AI, I see all of these issues as ones that have the opportunity to provide for people an on-ramp to create wealth if we do so responsibly. And that is the reason I think every single person has an obligation to roll our sleeves up, to teach our children how to operate in this space, to make sure that we are ensuring that people that we are helping businesses to grow. Like I said, these are the things that can happen with our help, is that businesses can grow, that small businesses can benefit. You know, there are so many different ways that people can grow economically from this if we make it safe. So that's why I put the guardrails there, make sure we have smart regulation, but let's also keep an eye on the fact that if you talk to any American right now, they are gravely concerned about the way that they will grow economically. Now, they don't want to be scammed and cheated, and that's the reason that I'm here, to make sure that is not happening. But economic opportunity and wealth is not a dirty word. It's a word that we think more people ought to have the opportunity to become wealthy, and I'm interested in making sure that that happens.
Thank you so much for being here. Any
Thank you.
last-minute questions? I see Lou Kerner has a question in the back.
Do you have any thoughts on a Bitcoin reserve, either for the state of Maryland or for the U.S.?
You know, I don't actually have on Bitcoin reserve. That's an issue I'd probably have to get back to you about. I haven't thought about that, a Bitcoin reserve.
One more question.
One, thank you for being curious. We see a lot of lawmakers that have their minds made up about things, and we appreciate it. I think everybody sort of appreciates your curiosity and being able to walk into a room and listen and learn. And so my question to you is, how can we all help our lawmakers become more curious like you?
Well, you know, I mean, I think that you all do a good job of talking to them. You know, I get lots of visits and lots of calls. I think engaging is really important. And I think that also lawmakers respond to their constituents. So having, you know, getting out and making sure that you're not only talking to lawmakers, but talking to the people who hire the lawmakers, I think is really important. You know, as I mentioned, the general public doesn't understand anything about this. They really don't. They only know what maybe they hear a little bit about on television, but I think that had really a concerted effort to educate the public about this area, I think is really important. And again, it is not just the lawmakers, but talking to the people who hire the lawmakers, getting really on a ground level, starting with the young people who are curious already, but have some concerns and interest. I think that's the way to do it. It's kind of a ground-up approach, a grassroots approach, I think is going to be really helpful. Because again, remember, people want to find all of these on-ramps to improve their economic positions, and this is one that I think if they really understood, you'd find more support among just general people.
Thank you so much. We are going to take a few pictures, and then we're going to everyone stay in the room. We are going to have our next keynote, which is Dr. Scott Sternetta. And I want to make sure that everyone hears what he has to share because of both the AI, which you've talked about, because he's created SureMark, but also he with his partner, Dr. Haber, over 34 years ago, actually created the blockchain technology. All right.
Thank you.
just keep going?
You can stop.
Okay.
Dr. All right, everyone. We are going to transition into our second keynote, which is Dr. Sternetta, and I'm going to go into the projection room so we can actually have your PowerPoint up. So if you give me a quick second, I will end up having that show on screen, but would you like to come on up? Everyone, a warm welcome. Thank you.
Some people have to use their hands to talk. I need my slides to talk, so I'm mute until those slides come up. So 2 blockchains walk into a bar. I've been working on that one for several years. I still don't have kind of where it ends. Sure. My background, I was born at an early age, which was the tradition in our family. I was born and raised in Maryland, and happy to be back in Maryland. You know, okay, now I have my slides. Now I can talk. Okay. You know, I really was struck by the title that appears on the Maryland Blockchain Week. You know, I'm going to pause right here. And Jackie, if you will tell me when I have to finish, then I will. You can take as much time as you need. We adjusted the schedule for today. Okay. All right. I'm going to try to stick to the 30 that was allotted to me. Now I've lost my slide. Is it my fault?